Welcome to episode 54 of the AMT podcast. Today I want to talk about next week's US presidential election. Now, this is historically the biggest market on Betfair. In 2020, over £500 million was matched. It's an event I've historically done rather well on. This is the third election that I'm trading. I correctly predicted Trump would win in 2016. I incorrectly predicted that he would win in 2020. This time around, I'm just going to give my thoughts leading up to election night, which so far has always proven to be a treat to trade. I won't reveal my final prediction here, but I will be doing a more detailed write-up with my predictions on Substack. So you can check that out in the link below. Now, as I record this video, Trump is trading at around 1.6. Kamala's drifted out to around 2.7. And the price is bouncing around sort of a 10-15 tick range. The recent steam on Trump's price was a little bit surprising, given that blunder at Trump's New York rally where comedian Tony Hinchcliffe made a rather crude joke about Puerto Ricans. Now, Puerto Rico, despite being a part of US territory, they can't actually vote. However, there's millions of Puerto Ricans living in mainland USA. Nearly 6 million, in fact, and many of them live in Pennsylvania, which is actually a key battleground state. I think Republicans are only a slight favorite to win there. So Hinchcliffe joked that Puerto Rico was basically a floating land of garbage. Now, given that he's come to the rally to support Trump, I'm not so sure why he would experiment, with edgy, potentially racially charged jokes so close to the election. Now, in his defense, everyone was in the line of fire, and I'm all for offensive jokes. I just think it wasn't the time or place, especially when things are so tight in a key battleground state like Pennsylvania. And you would think that this would be a golden opportunity for Democrats to milk it and take the moral high ground. And they leapt at the chance to call it racist and hateful and evil and basically a common trait of the right-wing supporters. But the left, being the left, are experts at tripping over their own hurdles because their very own sitting president, Joe Biden, snapped back by calling all of Donald Trump's supporters human garbage. So that's around 80 million people he's just isolated. And the cherry on top was George Lopez, the comedian and former talk show host, came out to the Arizona rally in support of Kamala and made a racist joke himself about Mexicans potentially stealing building materials if Trump doesn't build a wall fast enough. But of course, not a peep from the left. But jokes aside, if you found any of them funny, one thing I have learned from political betting is to absolutely not trust the polls. Polls, in my opinion, are just a scam. The first political event that I ever traded was Brexit, which I think was around 1.1 to remain on the exchange. And the polls and the political pundits, the likes of Andrew Neil and Joe Coburn, as far as I remember, were laughing jovially and mocking the prospect of Britain ever voting to leave. But a surprise laid in waiting, as Britain did in fact win the majority vote to leave the European Union. Now, the media were in just absolute pieces, and they conjured up all sorts of theories as cope. And the bottom line is the polls were just a scam. And those who voted leave were called racist and uninformed. So sore were the Remain voters that they even demanded a revote. And one study even posited that the less educated someone was, the more likely they were to vote leave. Now, in my opinion, the study was in all likelihood intended to be a sort of backhanded comment. But in all honesty, voting the opposite way of some 21-year-old snot-nosed brat with their blue hair and their liberal arts degree that's not worth the paper it's written on, then I would take that as a compliment. The sheer arrogance of the left is not to be underestimated. And only a few months later, we had the 2016 presidential election, and it was literally the same scenario all over again. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton were battling it out, and I think Hillary Clinton was around, 1.3 on the exchanges to win. Now, Clinton had the backing of the entire mainstream media and Hollywood. Now, for years in the run-up, we were told how Donald Trump was racist, narcissist, fascist. He wants to make America white and start wars and ban all Muslims and the whole 9 yards. But he won. And the media, again, were just beside themselves. They couldn't fathom how a racist, narcissist, fascist criminal could be sworn into presidency. And despite all the fear-mongering, none of which turned out to be true, we were clobbered over the head daily with faux outrage based off sound bites. And it's the only way the news stations could maintain their ratings. And as for the 2020 presidential race, the polls this time predicted Trump would win, only for him to lose. But what should disturb you more was the active suppression by social media for the New York Times Hunter Biden laptop story. The tech monopoly clearly weren't taking any chances this time. So the polls have been wrong 3 out of 3 times in the last 3 major political events that I've traded. Now, Trump appeared on Joe Rogan's podcast last week, and he revealed himself that these pollsters charge a fortune, $500,000 to $1 million, and not even he understands the methodology by which they conduct these polls. After all, do you know anyone or know of anyone who's been polled? And what's the sample size? And in what age, what financial and ethnic demographic are the people being polled? Because polls can tell us absolutely anything. They can be manipulated, and the effects can be potent, especially in a close election. So for example, if a pollster goes to a Republican state like Florida and approaches an LGBTQ rally, the poll in all likelihood will show very strong left-leaning Democrat support. So if the mainstream media decides to reference the poll and it shows that Democrats are overwhelmingly likely to win that state, then Republican voters will be deterred from voting because they'll think to themselves, there's no point, we've already lost. But in fairness, there's really no accurate way of capturing the sentiment of millions of people. The UK has 70 million people, so it's just impossible for polls to have accurately forecasted Brexit, especially when the nation was only separated by 1.5 million votes, or 51 to 49%. And the US population has 350 million people. And Joe Biden received 81 million votes, effectively making him the most popular presidential candidate ever. More popular than Obama. Oh, sorry, I just saw a pig fly. And Donald Trump received 74 million votes, or 51% against 48%. So that would just be impossible for a pollster to capture sentiment to that degree of accuracy when the margins are that fine in such a big country. So as an individual making a prediction, your worldview is largely determined by those around you. So if you live in a diverse city like London, which is consequently quite liberal, most of your friends and family are likely to have left-leaning views. But that has no bearing on how the rest of the country is feeling. So in the case of Brexit, being part of the European Union meant that some industries were left decimated up north. But London is a service-based economy, unlike some of the manufacturing cities in, say, Yorkshire. So, we don't have any clue what grievances people are addressing in different parts of the country. When you couple that with the fact that the media machine is based in London and only speaks about issues affecting what's happening in the southern part of the country, you just have this one big bubble, and then when it bursts, people are surprised to find out that the rest of the country don't feel the same way. And the same thing happens in America. The American media machine is the most powerful in the world, but that doesn't mean it's accurate. It just makes the bubble bigger. So like the BBC in London, you have the likes of MSNBC and CNN, which are based in left-wing democratic hotbeds like New York and Los Angeles. And these are nothing more than fake news channels who don't want you well-informed. They just want you engaged. And the hosts, who are nothing more than scripted talking heads, don't have any specialist knowledge. Otherwise, they wouldn't be falling over themselves every time an election result comes in. Today's mainstream media outlets, their ratings are at an all-time low. And that's no doubt been aided by the rise of social media, podcasts, and indie stations where content creators have full control over what they choose to talk about. I'm talking about the likes of Joe Rogan, the Young Turks, Dave Pakman, Steve Crowder, and even Piers Morgan, as of late, have higher ratings than these news channels. Now, social media is a double-edged sword, because whilst it's given content creators the freedom to report the news as they see fit, tech giants like Google and YouTube have been known to actively suppress and manipulate what you see and what you hear. I did a video in the summer. I did another podcast episode reporting Google's Gemini, their AI prompt, which didn't recognize white people. If you go back to the 2020 election, it's been proven that the likes of Facebook and Twitter actively suppressed the Hunter Biden laptop scandal, which proved to be a key factor in the 2020 election. If you try and search for the Joe Rogan Donald Trump podcast from last week, which is at over 40 million hits, it doesn't even appear on the first page of YouTube. You have to search it by view count. But despite the active suppression and algorithm rigging, social media has allowed content creators to have unscripted, real conversations with guests where they can veer from topic to topic. And you just don't get that with mainstream news and these live debates where they can't discuss complex and nuanced issues under a really short time limit. And also, unlike mainstream media, you can just read through the comments on YouTube. And And you can get a real feel for what the sentiment is amongst people. It's not perfect, but it's a lot more accurate than polls. The point I'm making here is that people tend to think that their world is the world. Your friends and family and your peers are just a product of an environment that's different from the rest of the country. And the social media algorithms are constantly changing in order to recommend content that's going to keep you engaged and just confirm your worldview. And then finally, there's the mainstream media who deliberately engage in sensationalism in order to make sure you watch. Social media championed the idea of making the world a smaller place by making us more connected. But the truth is that we're more fractured than ever. The divide between the left and right could not be deeper, as people are going to hear and see what they want to hear and see. The algorithms make sure of that. We live in an illusion of freedom of thought and expression. The truth is, you are being programmed. So it's more important than ever to question and challenge everything you see and hear. Try and get to the source and find out the facts. The left's tactics of shutting down discourse, shadow banning, suppressing information, name calling has not only hardened conservatives, but it's even pushed moderates into the right-wing camp. From Brexit to Donald Trump, supporters have been plastered daily with labels of racism, narcissism, fascism, every ism and schism under the sun, to the point where it's just water off a duck's back. It doesn't work. And this goes for any ideology, whether it's vegans shaming meat eaters, or atheists insulting God, or United fans taunting Liverpool fans. All it does is harden the opposition stance. It doesn't win anyone over. It's human nature to defend what's close to you if it's under threat. Discourse is the only way to agree or disagree harmoniously, and it feels like we've lost that. The left clearly dominate big tech, Hollywood, and even academic institutions. There's strong enough evidence to support that. They actively cancel or excommunicate any celebrity who speaks out against this woke ideology, whether it be an overrepresentation of LGBT or diversity and inclusion reforms, which are actively racist since they require lower qualifying standards based on race, or if it's the transgender community who are pursuing kids now, men participating in women's sport, open borders, removing amendments from the Constitution, extorting business owners for more tax, the continuation of foreign wars. The list just goes on. It's bad enough that the left don't understand wealth creation. They cannot even define what a male or a female is. They are so far unhinged that they literally view regression as progression, and they shut you down if you don't bow to the cult. A vote for Kamala Harris is a continuation of these things. She either actively supports these policies or her donors do. In other words, she's another Joe Biden, just an empty vessel, a perfect puppet for lobbyists and the military-industrial complex. When pressed on hard issues, her default position is either to deflect and just waffle, or she circles back to attacking Trump. She's not a real person. No one knows who she really is. She can't handle a real unscripted conversation without a teleprompter because the mask will fall off. This is why she's rejected to go on the #1 podcast with Joe Rogan. Donald Trump did. And whatever you think of the man on a personal level is irrelevant. At face value, he is a bombastic. He embellishes everything. He says what's on his mind, and it often gets him caught in the crossfire. But what you see is what you get. It's not a veneer. He's not being fake. Whether he's at a rally or at a podcast, he's the same person. And he doesn't shy away from interviews. He's sat from, savvy businessmen and MMA experts like Patrick Bet-David and Joe Rogan, and then with YouTube pranksters like the Nelk Boys or Logan Paul. Unlike Kamala, he's tapping into the younger demographic because he understands how important they are for the American vote. So this election is essentially the same script as the last two have been, just with different characters. It's a war between two sides. On one hand, you have the mainstream media, big tech and Hollywood. And on the other hand, you have the silent masses of middle America. But this time, the playing field is a little bit more even. Big tech's grip has loosened. Elon Musk bought Twitter, so conservatives don't really have to fear being cancelled. Moderates are also being forced into the right-wing camp. Even left-wing people, like Democrats like Tulsi Gabbard, are now Republicans. And Trump has also tapped into the side of content creators who appeal to the younger demographic. Kamala is a late substitute for Joe Biden, a candidate who the left swore up and down was fit to run for office. Can she rally enough support in such a short space of time against Donald Trump, who's effectively been rallying for the last 8 years? Like I said, she has the very powerful backing of the media and the entertainment industry, which was enough to stop Trump last time. Remember, 80 million people voted for Biden, the most popular president in history. Never forget. In my opinion, I think this is going to go to the wire. I think there's going to be some surprise swing states in the key battleground states, because there always has been. It's going to boil down to Arizona, Georgia, Pennsylvania, Michigan, North Carolina, like it always does. I feel like I'm long enough in the tooth to not be surprised. These things are never straightforward to trade. The markets have been wrong 3 out of 3 times in the last 3 big political events that I've traded. And whilst I'm clear in my mind about who I want to win, I can make that separation from who I think will win. And if the two diverge, I'm willing to bet in the opposite direction. So hopefully my ability to trade this event and think rationally won't be hindered. But like I said, I'll be posting my detailed prediction on Substack. So I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to see that. But let me know what you guys think. Who do you want to win, or who do you think is going to win? Leave a comment below, subscribe, share, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Best of luck trading.